Agle, the queen of serpents. In another time, long ago lived an old man and his wife. Both of them had 12 sons and 3 daughters, the youngest being named Agle. On a warm summer evening, all 3 girls decided to go swimming. After splashing about with each other and bathing, they climbed onto the riverbank to dress and groom their hair. But the youngest, Agle, only stared, for a serpent had slithered into the sleeve of her blouse. What was she to do? The eldest girl grabbed Agle's blouse. She threw the blouse down and jumped on it, anything to get rid of the serpent. But the serpent turned to the youngest, Agle, and spoke to her in a man's voice. Agle, promise to become my bride, and I will gladly come out. Agle began to cry. How could she marry a serpent? Through her tears, she answered, Please give me back my blouse and return from whence you came in peace. But the serpent would not listen. Promise to become my bride, and I will gladly come out. There was nothing else she could do. She promised the serpent to become his bride. After 3 days, the family saw that every serpent in the land had come to their farm, bringing with them a wagon. The whole family was scared, while all the serpents began to slither around in the wild abandon. One of the serpents entered the house to meet with the old man, Agle's father, and to discuss the terms of the union. At first, the old man hemmed and hawed, refusing to believe that this could be happening. But when all the serpents in the land have gathered at one man's farm, it does not matter how one feels. So he promised to give his youngest and most beautiful daughter over to the serpents. But the old man held treachery in his heart. He asked the serpents to wait a little while. As quickly as he could, he ran to the local wise woman and told her everything. The wise woman said, It is easy to trick a serpent. Instead of your daughter, give him a goose and send the wedding presents. The old man did as the wise woman advised. He dressed a white goose in Agle's clothing, and together, father and daughter climbed into a wagon and began their journey. A short while later, they heard a cuckoo bird in a birch tree singing. Cuckoo, cuckoo, you have been tricked. Cuckoo, cuckoo, you have been tricked. Instead of a bride, he has given you a white goose. Cuckoo, cuckoo. The parents, on the advice of the wise woman, dressed the white sheep up. Again the cuckoo bird sang, Cuckoo, cuckoo, you have been tricked. Instead of a bride, he has given you a white sheep. Cuckoo, cuckoo. The serpents returned to the farm in great anger and again demanded the bride. This time the family gave the serpents a white cow. The cuckoo bird tells the serpents of the father's deception, and again, the serpents return, this time in a towering rage. The serpents threatened famine for the disrespect shown by the parents. Inside the house, Agle cried. She was dressed as was appropriate for a bride and was given over to the serpents. While taking Agle to her future husband, the serpents heard the cuckoo bird sing out, Drive, hurry, the groom awaits his bride. Eventually, Agle and all her chaperones came to the sea. There she met a handsome young man who was waiting for her by the beach. He told her that he was the serpent that had crawled into her sleeve of her blouse. Soon, they all moved to a nearby island, and from there, they descended underground, under the sea. There could be found a lavishly decorated palace of amber. It was here that the wedding was held, and for 3 weeks, they drank, danced, and feasted. The serpent's palace was filled with guests, and Agli finally calmed down, became happier, and completely forgot her homeland. 9 years went by, and Agli gave birth to 3 sons, Aeschylus, Wasis, and Burgess, and a daughter, Trebule, who was the youngest. One day while playing, the eldest son asked Agli, "Dearest mother, where do your parents live? Let's go visit them." It was then that Agli remembered her homeland. She remembered her parents, brothers, and sisters, and she began to wonder if life was good to them, and are they healthy? It had been a long time, and maybe they were all dead. Agli desperately wanted to see her homeland. It had been many years since she saw that land of her birth. She yearned to see it again. Her husband, the serpent, didn't even want to listen to her pleas. "Fine," he said. "Go and visit, but first spin this tuft of silk," and he showed her the spindle. Agli was at the spindle. She spun during the day, she spun all night. Spin, spin, but it would not be spun. She saw that she had been tricked. Spin, spin, but it will never be spun. Agli went to an old woman who lived nearby, a known sorceress. Agli lamented, "Grandmother, dear heart, teach me how to get that tuft of silk spun." The old woman told her what to do and what was needed for the task. Throw it onto a fire when next it is kindled. Elseways, you shall not be able to spin the silk. Having returned home, Agli threw the silk into a bread oven, recently fired up. The silk went up in flames, and in the center of the oven, where the silk once was there, was a toad. The toad was creating silk from its body. Having woven the silk, Agli returned to her husband, pleading to allow at least a few days for a visit with her parents. Now, her husband drew out from beneath his bench a pair of metal boots. "When you wear these down, then you shall travel." She put on the boots and walked and stomped and even dragged along the stone floor. The boots were thick and hard and were not at all worn down. Walk or do not walk, the shoes will forever last. Going back to the sorceress, she pleaded for more help. The old woman said, "Take them to a blacksmith and ask that he wear them down in his furnace." And Agli did as she was instructed. The boots were heated well, and within 3 days, Agli had worn them down. Having worn the boots down, she approaches her husband so that he may allow her to visit her homeland. "Fine," said the serpent, "but for your journey, you must bake at least a rabbit pie, for what shall you give to your brothers and their children?" In the meanwhile, the serpent ordered that all the cooking utensils be hidden so that Agli was not able to bake the pies. Agli began to think, how shall she bring in water without a bucket and make dough without a bowl? Again, she returns to the old lady for advice. Grandmother says, "Spread out the sifted leavening, immerse the sieve into water, and within it mix the dough." Agli did as she was instructed. She mixed, baked, and had the pies ready. Now, she bid a farewell to her husband and went out with her children to her homeland. The serpent led them part of the way and got them across the sea and said that she be no longer than 9 days in her homeland and that she is to return at the end of those 9 days. When you return, go alone, just you and the children, and when you approach the beach, then call for me. Jovinus, Jovinus, if you are alive, may the sea foam milk. If dead, may the sea foam blood. And if you see coming towards you foaming milk, then you know that I am still alive. But if blood comes, then I have reached my end. While you, my children, let not the secret out. Do not let anyone know how to call for me." Having said that, he bid farewell to his family and wished for them a swift return. Returning to her homeland, Aglae felt great joy. All her relatives and in-laws and neighbors gathered around. One after another asked many questions. How did she find living with a serpent to be? She just kept describing the many aspects of her life. Everyone offered their hospitality, their food, and good talk. She was in such great spirits that she did not even feel the 9 days pass. At this time, Aglae's parents, brothers, and sisters began to wonder how to keep their youngest amongst their midst. They all decided they must question the children, how their mother, having arrived at the beach, would call for her husband, so that they could go down to the seashore, call for the serpent, and kill him. Having agreed upon this, they called upon Aglae's eldest, Aeschylus, and praised him. They cornered him and questioned him, but he said that he did not know. Having failed, they threatened the child to not tell his mother of their actions. The second day, they let out Wasis and Berges, but from them too, the adults could not get the secret. Finally, they took Trebule, Aglae's youngest, outside. At first she did as her brothers, claiming to not know the secret, but the sight of Rod frightened her. She told all. Then all 12 brothers took their scythes with them and went towards the sea. Standing at the shore, they called, "Gilvanus, Gilvanus, if you are alive, may the sea foam milk. If dead, may the sea foam blood." When he swam up, then all the brothers fell to chopping the serpent into pieces. Then returning home, they kept the secret of their deeds from Aglae. 9 days passed. Aglae, bidding farewell to all family and friends, went off to the sea and called for her serpent. The sea shook, and floating towards Aglae was foam of blood. And she heard the voice of her beloved husband. "Your 12 brothers with their scythes cut me down. My call was given to them by our Trebule, our most beloved daughter." With great sorrow and thundering anger, Aglae turned to her children and said to Trebule, "May you turn into a willow. May you shiver day and night. May the rain cleanse your mouth. May the wind comb your hair." To her sons, "Stand, my sons, strong as trees. I, your mother, will remain a fear." As she commanded, so it came to be. And now the oak, ash, and birch are the strongest of our trees, while the willow to this day will shake at the slightest whisper of the wind, for she quaked before her uncles and gave away her true father. Jurate and Kastis. The calm Baltic Sea spreads embers on the coast after the storm. It seems as if it wants to apologize for the spurt of anger. As soon as the thunder, which is nicely called dundalis by children, moves away, everybody rushes to the seashore to pick up the gifts of the sea. These yellowish, heat-beaming little stones elevate joyful amazement for some people. Look what Jurate gives us. Other people just remember the old seacoast legend about Jurate and Kastis. Uneasy was life for the fishermen on the seacoast. The Baltic Sea was lavish only for the strong and stout-hearted people. Not one valiant, who was self-reliant overmuch, was taught a lesson. The sea tore the fishing nets and broke the oars. People used to talk in dismay and anxiety about those who didn't come back. Children used to say that the mermaids wowed and rocked the fishermen asleep. Young fisherman Kastis lived in a poor seacoast cabin only with his mother, because his father didn't come back from sea. It was hard to live near the seashore for a widow whose son Kastis looked towards the sea again and again. The earth, its troubles, hard and dirty work didn't attract him. The boy liked waves white with foam that nestled to his bare feet. Looking at misty distance, Kastis sang, and these songs were so nice that nobody could be annoyed with him, and nobody could objurgate him for his lack of care for his home and his mother. Kastis grew up fast. He was an attractive guy, and his songs charmed a lot of the girls, but none of the beauty's heart tied him on the coast. It seemed that somebody from the bottom of the sea was listening to the songs of Kastis. Just as Kastis started to sing, the waves calmed down. Everything around subsided and pricked up ears. Insensibly, Kastis swam further than other fishermen, and his fishing nets were full of fish. A water goddess Jurate lived at the bottom of the Baltic Sea. At the time, there were a lot of water nymphs which dove in the waves. They started to talk to Jurate about Kastis, his autotune songs, encouraged to fish more and more often. Jurate was curious why a terrestrial had disturbed the sea rules. He fascinated her subordinates by his songs and swam too far from the coast. Jurate summoned her servant water nymphs and decided to see the defiant valiant. The goddess ordered to sail the most beautiful ship from the deep waters to let commoner from the land see what a wealth lived in the sea. From the distance, she looked like a queen of earthly dream vestured in a sparkling scaly wrap. Dreamy Kastis saw Jurate as such an appearance. He hauled the net and sang quietly. His songs flew like earthly birds, and his sweet wings touched the ears of Jurate. She listened to that earthly song in astonishment, and the anger in her heart started to melt. "Hey fisherman, you steal my fishes," reproached Jurate in a strict voice. Kastis felt silent. Dazzling of a girl's beauty, the guy rubbed his eyes. Could he be dreaming? But it wasn't a dream. He was stupefied and didn't notice how quickly black clouds were rising from the distance and overcast the sky. Formidable Percunis, the thunder, swung his flaming arrows as he didn't want the earthly bug Kastis to hope being loved by the sea goddess. Never swim there anymore. Listen how angry Percunis has become. The goddess flashed out against the fisherman and dove in the waves. But later she appeared on the surface of the water once again and said, "But you sing very nicely," and she disappeared in the waves. Kastis didn't remember the time he came back. Just as he stepped ashore, Percunis hit so angrily that the biggest pine tree on the seashore became black from his wrath. In an hour's time, the awful storm started in the sea. It seemed that heaven and earth had mixed up. In such a way, Percunis was down on Jurate as she dared to show herself and even talk to the man whose life is so tenuous and short. Kastis went to the sea more and more often. Sounding songs wafted over the waves of the sea. That summer was stormy as never. Percunis beat, splashed over the waves almost every day and every night, took his revenge on the fisherman for his inhuman courage and on Jurate for her godlike forwardness. They met more and more often. They talked increasingly and didn't perceive that they started to yearn, and later fell in love with each other. Kastis told his mother what he saw in the sea, and his mother became very startled. He went to the sea more often. He saw nothing around him, neither his cabin nor sandy hills or his old mother, who was worried a lot. Have you ever seen a man who was eager to get into the water world where the goddess of the sea Jurate lived? "My son," "Don't go to the sea," cried his mother. "Isn't this earth feeding us enough? Look, the rye near the cabin is already pale." But Kastis was silent. He heard and saw nothing. He just looked for the right time to go to the sea. In the afternoon, his mother was sad and silent. She didn't like her son's joy, as wherever he went, he sang songs, and wherever he looked, he saw only the sea. When Kastis sat in the boat, white foam surrounded it, and powerful windflaw blew from the coast and took the boat forward. Shining, pretty sea goddess Jurate was waiting for her darling Kastis. From a distance, they saw each other. Nobody could stop them, neither rising waves nor flaming arrows of Percunus, and neither his menace. Sparkling, sweet, and miraculous Jurate invited her lover, the son of Earth. He stretched his hands, and they forgot themselves in the infinite felicity of their meeting. But as soon as Jurate's arms embraced Kastis' neck, a painful flaming arrow was thrust at Kastis' heart. Jurate saw the fading lover's eyes. His sloping arms that had just been holding her embraced. Despair and displeasure caught her. She pretended being the Earth's daughter-in-law, but not the Baltic Sea goddess. She gently laid her lover on the wave, stroked his eyes with her godlike fingers, and asked the water nymphs to take care of him. The water nymphs quickly took Kastis to the coast. In a fit of temper, Percunus knocked and banged about the Baltic Sea for a long time. Rigorous Sky King could not understand how it was possible to set one's heart on earthly felicity so airily. He broke Jurate's castle, the next arrow aimed at her perfect ships. Later, only a lot of chips, which were dissipated by the stormy waves, were lying in the deep waters. Nobody has seen Jurate since then. Only the amber, which is upcast from the Baltic Sea after the storms, recalls that water goddess who wanted earthly fortune and therefore was painfully punished, had lived in the deep sea. The ambers that were polished by centuries and the waves told their story about the godlike Jurate. If you take a piece of amber in your hands, it isn't difficult to imagine that it had its own great history to tell as it was beaten and fondled by the waves, heated by the sun, frozen by frost. Not a shorter way the legends went from mouth to mouth. They were told differently, and they were differently colored by narrator. The legend of Jurate and Kastis tells us about the inexorable desire of fortune, about the love like a present, about the happiness and death.